today's presentation is Your Liver, Your Health, but I'll start with a question to you. How often do you think about your liver? Just think to yourself, how often have you thought of your liver? So unlike your heart that beats when it's nervous, or your stomach that growls when you're hungry, your liver is really something that sits in the background and is quiet, but it's the largest organ in your body. And it's, as long as it stays healthy, you really don't notice your liver at all. So the liver is located at the upper right portion of the abdominal cavity, beneath your diaphragm, on top of your stomach, and your right kidney and your intestine. Did you know that at any given point of time, your liver holds almost 13% of your blood? And so it's getting this blood from two distinct sources, from the hepatic artery and from the portal vein. So the oxygen-rich blood flows from the hepatic artery, while the nutrients from your intestine are through your hepatic vein. So you might ask the question, why is she telling us any of this information? Why does the liver actually need oxygen and nutrients supplied by your blood? Your liver is the ultimate multitasker. For the moms in the room who think they're multitaskers, you have nothing next to this liver. So it processes virtually everything you eat, everything you drink, everything you put on your skin, everything you breathe. It performs more than 500 vital functions in your body, all simultaneously, 24 hours a day, from the day you are born to the day that you die. Number one, it cleanses your blood. So it metabolizes alcohol and other drugs. These could be illicit drugs, and these can also be the drugs that you get prescribed from your doctors. Other chemicals, it neutralizes these, and then it destroys the poisonous substances. And it's so efficient that the stuff that it doesn't need, all those byproducts, it then uses to create bile, which is made in the liver and then is stored in the gallbladder. And this helps with digestion. The other important thing that it does is that it regulates almost everything that in your blood. So when it comes to your blood fuels, it regulates the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fats. It regulates the balances in your hormones. It regulates the blood, all of your blood's cholesterol, and it also supplies the essential vitamins and minerals as well. So your liver is not only this multifunctional taskmaster, but it also is able to regenerate itself. So it's one of the only organs that's able to do this, making it the most resilient organ as well, and making it my favorite organ. But even the biggest and the most resilient can only take so much. So most people know that viruses like hepatitis A, hepatitis B, C, D, E, these are all things that can affect your liver and cause inflammation, and that's what hepatitis is called, which is inflammation of the liver. Most people also know if you drink too much alcohol, then you're also going to have problems with your liver. But did you know that what you eat and how much you eat is the primary cause of most liver disease worldwide? And this is because each time a person consumes more sugar than his or her body needs, the sugar is converted into fat and accumulates in the liver. So this process is known as lipogenesis. So over time, lipogenesis occurs and you accumulate fat in your liver cells, and these are hepatocytes mostly in the liver. This accumulation of fat causes inflammation. Inflammation over time creates a hepatitis. Remember, hepatitis just means inflammatory response of the liver. Then this inflammatory response eventually over time creates scarring of the liver, and that's fibrosis. And then the latest stage of fibrosis is called cirrhosis. Fibrosis is cirrhosis, and that puts you at increased risks of liver cancers, needing liver transplant, and then eventually death. But remember that the liver is this resilient organ. So a lot of these processes can be reversed, and you can stop them from progressing. So how common is liver disease? This is a study that combined 200 studies, which equated to about 2.5 million people worldwide. And they were interested in looking at the prevalence of fatty liver disease over time. So from 1990 to 2020, they collected all of the data that was available for them. And what they found was that in 1990 that the prevalence was about 18%. So 1 in 5 people approximately had fatty liver disease. And then over time, this was increasing gradually, but increasing nonetheless. So by 2020, this study of 200 studies estimated that about 35% of worldwide population had chronic liver disease from fatty liver. And then they were interested in, well, if this projection kept continuing at the same rate as it was going, what would it be like? And you can see that by 2040, that they estimate about 56% of people would have liver disease. So meaning 1 in 3. So this is a study that was published in Canada using Canadian data. So there's not very many studies that actually identify people with fatty liver disease itself. So you have to take estimations from the number of people who have diabetes and have obesity, and then combine this information to estimate how much liver disease is actually out there. You can see that Dr. Sebastiani is one of the authors of this study that was published in 2020. And they estimate that between 2019 and 2030, that fatty liver disease is going to increase by 20%. So from 7.8 million people to 9.3 million people. So we're not talking about a rare disease in any way. This is another study that took data from Ontario. And what they were interested in was not so much just fatty liver disease, which is the benign fat accumulation in your liver. So some of you will go for fiber scans and you'll see that you do have fatty liver disease. Again, I said, 1 in 3 of you probably has fatty liver disease. It's not to worry that every one of you is going to end up having cirrhosis and eventually having worse outcomes. They were interested in the people who had really advanced liver disease, so a number of people who had cirrhosis. And what they found was people who had cirrhosis from causes like viral hepatitis, so hepatitis B and C, were actually decreasing. And this is because we have vaccinations available for hepatitis A and B, and we have very effective treatments for hepatitis C. Alcoholic liver disease is sort of maintaining itself. It's not going up, it's not going down, that's the green line. The blue line is the line of people who are getting cirrhosis from fatty liver disease. And you can see the projections are increasing significantly from now until 2040. So not only are we going to have this increase in NAFLD or fatty liver disease, but then we're also going to see the outcomes from it as well. So who's at risk? So as Mike had already said, fatty liver disease and metabolic dysfunction essentially go hand in hand. It's very hard to sort of distinguish what's a risk factor because there's so much overlapping. So people who have obesity, people who are living with obesity, people who have type 2 diabetes, people who have dyslipidemia, these are all factors that would increase your chance for having fatty liver disease. The relationship between fatty liver disease and type 2 diabetes is even more interesting because having type 2 diabetes makes you at risk of having fatty liver disease, but also fatty liver disease puts you at risk of worse outcomes in type 2 diabetes. And Dr. Sebastiani is going to talk more about this special population. So this is another one of these meta-analysis where they take multiple studies to ask a specific research question. So here they're asking what percentage of people who have diabetes have NAFLD? And it ranges between 55 and 70%. So if you have type 2 diabetes, your risk of having fatty liver disease is significantly higher. So going from 1 in 3, now we're at 2 to 3 if you have type 2 diabetes. Okay, so here's a question to the brave audience. True or false? If fatty liver disease is caused by fat accumulating in the liver, I'd have to be overweight to have fatty liver disease. No, false, exactly. So what we see from this graph is that they were interested in looking at people with normal BMI. So these are not people who are overweight, these are not people who have obesity, and evaluating the prevalence over in different countries. The lighter areas are the people who have normal body weight but still have fatty liver disease. And what's interesting here is how it varies over different geographies. And again, Dr. Sebastiani is going to talk a little bit more about possibly reasons why. So I'm an epidemiologist. I'm not a clinician. I don't see patients. All I do is deal with data mostly. So what I'm interested in is what is the cause? We know unhealthy food is one of the major causes of fatty liver disease, and this is because the liver is metabolizing all of all these different foods. We know an unhealthy sedentary lifestyle is another risk factor, but the question is why? I think Mike is over there. So Mike had already brought up the idea that sugar addiction is definitely one of the reasons why. We have, as a society, accepted people have alcohol addictions, they've have drug addictions, but we haven't accepted the fact that sugar addiction is actually is a problem as well. Our busy lifestyles are the reasons why we have these sedentary life behaviors and why we gravitate towards these convenience foods. So we have to sort of start to understand why these are factors as well. Something else, most chronic conditions, 50% of the reason why you have that chronic condition can be related back to your postal code. This is because of social determinants of health. These are where you live, how much money you make, your education, your family structure. Attributable, if you take all of that together, 50% of your outcomes are based on these social determinants of health. So as public health specialists like myself, this is what we have to start thinking about, is the why factor, that we have these inequities in health outcomes. Food insecurity is one of these, and this is something that we're seeing more and more because of COVID. World hunger has really increased dramatically all over the world, and they've linked food insecurity to fatty liver disease as well. And of course, we're in Canada. Indigenous populations have 3 to 5 times the risk of having fatty liver disease. This is because they have increased high risk of having diabetes, which is overlaid with the fact that they have food insecurities, and they live in, especially Indigenous populations that live on reserves, also have no access to fresh foods as well. Okay, so fatty liver disease is so common and only projected to get worse. This must be a public health priority. What do you think? Is it a public health priority? Absolutely not. So despite these high prevalences, the alarming projections, the significant economic costs that will come with all of this disease that will come in the next decade, fatty liver disease has received very little attention from the global public health community. So this is a study was published last year where they wanted to evaluate which countries were doing well in terms of public health policy. And what they found, 1 in 3 countries scored a 0 on policy related preparedness. And no country scored more than a 50 on 100. Although NAFLD is this pressing public health problem, the response was lacking in all 102 countries. And policies and strategies to address NAFLD at the national and the global levels were urgently needed. You might want to ask, how did Canada do? We scored 18 out of 100. So we have 0 policies. We have some guidelines. We have some civil awareness, and that's because of Fatty Liver Alliance. There's no other agencies that are spreading the word. There's almost no epidemiological research, and that's why I'm focusing my research on this. NAFLD screening is not recommended, and NAFLD care and management, there's only some guidance out there for doctors. So that's what we're trying to do today. We're trying to spread awareness.